families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Families Divided. In this week's edition, Dr. Mary Alvarez joins us and speaks to us about understanding and dealing with abuse allegations regarding parental alienation. We also have joining us Bill Eddy, who will be a presenter at our upcoming conference, September 9th through the 11th, which will be a virtual conference now, and I hope you'll be able to join us. He'll be letting you know what he'll be speaking on during that conference. The title of our conference is Handling Parental Alienation Using Better Communication and Self-Care. I hope you'll be able to join us. And now we'll have these segments.
At Victor's Crown, our focus is on you, our clients. When you arrive, our goal is that you will feel at home, from our welcoming atmosphere to our serene surroundings. Everything we do at Victor's Crown is done with our clients in mind. We have comfortable seating areas for both adults and children. A large screen TV with surround sound where clients can be occupied with wholesome entertainment while they wait. We offer complimentary refreshments such as coffee, tea, water, and snacks. Due to the present COVID pandemic, our in-person appointments are restricted to selected cases, and those are held in our luxurious outdoor open-air meeting space that we affectionately refer to as the COVID Cabana, which was built specifically for our clients to offer them the most comfortable and relaxing outdoor space available. All our other clients are offered secured web-based telemed sessions where they can connect with us from anywhere in the world.
Hi, I'm Bill Eddy, and I'm going to be one of the speakers at the conference in September. I'm going to be speaking on overcoming the contagious emotions of alienation. And people don't realize how significant emotions are in alienating children. And what I'll be talking about is the dynamics of how emotions are contagious, a little bit about the brain, a little bit about personalities who tend to have excessive emotions that overwhelm children so that they either try to satisfy the person by just giving up themselves and thinking like the other person, or really want to escape that person. So we'll talk about how emotions are contagious, personalities that tend to lack emotional boundaries. That's what the problem is. And then I'll talk about skills that we can teach, parents especially, but that everyone can learn to help children not be overwhelmed by emotions and to be able to have managed emotions, flexible thinking, moderate behavior, which really reduces alienation. So I'll be talking about this during my session, and I'll include a little bit about our New Ways for Families method that we've been teaching to parents actually around the world, and some court systems have ordered this method of teaching the essentially high conflict parent to manage their emotions better and have more flexible thinking. But we teach the same skills to a reasonable parent, to anyone really who wants to learn. We have a counseling method, we have an online course method, and coaching with that. So I'll be talking about all of that. I'll save the rest for when I see you at the conference in September. Best wishes.
Hi, I am Dr. Mary Alvarez, and I'm very happy to be here with you to talk about the very difficult topic of false allegations in parental alienation cases. It's not uncommon in moderate and severe alienation cases for the favored parent to make false allegations against the target parent and use the child as the one to promote the false allegations. It's distressing and it's upsetting and it's disheartening. So I want to talk about it because it's a frequent occurrence in these families and help you understand that there are some things that you can do to help promote the notion that the allegations are false without further damaging the child. So let's get started and just kind of talk in general about the 4 categories of allegations. They tend to fall in 4 different categories: physical abuse allegations, psychological abuse allegations, sexual abuse allegations, and allegations of neglect. So those are the 4 categories from which the allegations would fall. And so let's talk about some of these in a little bit more detail. So if we look at the category of physical abuse allegations, oftentimes favored parents will allege that the target parent hits the child, that the target parent overspanks the child, that the target parent throws things at the child, or sometimes allegations that the target parent manhandles the child, grabs the child, yanks the child, pushes the child into a door or a wall. Now, these are not the only physical abuse allegations that can be made, but I wanted to give you a sense of some of the most common ones that we hear about and that have to be investigated. So if we're looking at false allegations of psychological abuse, these are some common allegations that we hear as professionals in the field. We hear allegations that the target parent name calls the child, humiliates the child, shames the child, or tries to make the child feel very bad, or allegations that the target parent talks to the child negatively and denigrates the favored parent, that the target parent involves extended family members in a campaign to denigrate the favored parent to the child, that the target parent uses whatever means necessary to try and psychologically control the child in a custody dispute, for example. So those are some very common psychological abuse allegations that we hear. From a sexual abuse allegation perspective, we often hear things such as the target parent touches inappropriately the child. The target parent walks in on the child when the child is undressing or in the bathroom, things of that nature. Or the target parent inappropriately takes showers or baths with the child. And then there's the concept of voyeurism, in which the target parent is alleged to spy on the child and try and catch the child in an undressed position or something in the bath or in the bedroom changing clothes for sexual gratification. So those are some of the common sexual abuse allegations that we find that target parents have to deal with. From a neglectful perspective, the allegations that we see tend to be along the lines of failing to keep the child safe, letting the child ride in the car without seat belts or child seats, letting the child be unattended at home, alone, in the car alone, while the target parent runs into a store, for example. Things that are neglectful, not paying attention to the child's nutrition and not making sure that the child has at least somewhat balanced meals, or failing to make sure that the child completes all of the homework, gets it turned in, shows up for activities, shows up for practice. Allegations that the target parent doesn't take the child to the weekend games or other activities that the child is involved in, and also some allegations that the target parent is not involved in the child's medical care or psychological care. by way of either not taking the child to scheduled appointments with the pediatrician or the psychologist, or failing to interact with the pediatrician or psychologist in a way that would be helpful in order to promote the health of the child. So of those 4 categories, I just went through several examples of things that we find on a fairly regular basis, being alleged, against the target parent. And as I mentioned earlier, these allegations of abuse occur almost always, if not exclusively, in severe parental alienation cases, but they also occur at very high frequencies in the moderately alienated child. He still has some contact with the parent, but it's very difficult contact. So should allegations always be investigated, even though as a target parent, you know that they are false, and it's very distressing to have to go through an investigation process? Well, the short answer is yes. If you want to prove that the allegations are false, there has to be an investigation, and by law, there has to be a report to Child Protective Services when a professional hears about allegations of abuse, and that includes teachers and school counselors as well. And so it's uncomfortable, and it can create anger and frustration in the target parent, but you're going to have to endure it and do your very best, to get through the process and provide factual information and data to the investigator. All right, so as we move along through this topic, let's talk about why do some parents make allegations that are false against a target parent? Why is that happening? Why is that part of parental alienation? Well, there's some examples and some instances in which the favored parent is legitimately a very, very anxious person, and they have dealt with anxiety, sometimes crippling, for their entire life in some instances. And so there's valid anxiety, but what ends up happening is the favored parent uses anxiety as a filter or a lens from which to watch and gauge and make conclusions about information. And so they look at the child and they misinterpret signs or things that the child says as somehow the target parent is abusing the child, versus looking at it with a more objective lens that it might just be a developmental phase that the child's going through. It might not mean anything at all, but they will spin it based on their anxiety into something much more nefarious and concerning. And then here come the allegations, the false allegations of some sort of abuse. Now, conversely, there are parents who intentionally create false allegations of abuse. And their premise is that they need to protect the child and the court needs to protect the child. And so therefore marginalize the target parent's interaction and connection with the child, either no contact at all or minimally, severely reduced contact and supervised types of contact. So these are the parents that make false allegations as part of their court case. It is using the child to accomplish a legal goal, which again is oftentimes sole custody and either no contact with the target parent or severely reduced contact and supervised contact between the child and the target parent. So these parents are on a campaign, to use allegations of abuse as one of their mechanisms or tools. So why would a favored parent do that? Well, generally there's 3 things that favored parents have as their agenda. All right. Their desire to win in a custody case. All right. They will do anything and everything to win. So it's mostly about winning, but it can also be about revenge against the target parent. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity to levy revenge when you involve the child and you turn the child against the target parent. And in the moderate and severe ranges of parental alienation, we know that there is significant favored parent psychopathology, including the personality disorders, which are very, very difficult, to change and to remedy, and part of the favored parent's fabric, so to speak. And so when you have those factors as motivators to use parental alienation tactics to interfere in the target parent relationship with the child. They use false allegations. It can be quite successful in being extremely disruptive for the parent-child relationship with the target parent. It's also not uncommon for old allegations of abuse that have already been investigated, that have already been unsubstantiated and determined to not be valid, to be recycled by these favored parents. And it happens frequently when a new judge is appointed or takes the bench, new attorneys come on board, the court appoints an amicus attorney or an ad litem attorney, or the court appoints a custody evaluator or maybe a mental health professional for counseling services. It's very common for these old allegations to be recycled by the favored parent in the hopes that somebody new will take notice. And even though the allegations have been proven to be unsubstantiated, a new professional involved will take note of that and put more emphasis on those old recycled allegations of abuse. So that is also something that happens, unfortunately, to target parents. They just can't seem to get away from, these allegations, even though they've been unproven. There are about 7 ways that favored parents come to lock into a belief system that promotes the reason that they promote false allegations of abuse. So let's go through these 7 thought processes or attitudes that favored parents can have. And again, this would not be an exhaustive list, but it does account for a great many of the reasons behind false allegations of abuse. So the first one is, I'm afraid that my child, the favored parent's child, will love you more, referring to the target parent, and will want to spend more time with you. And so this is based on the favored parent having some understanding that they do have some psychopathology, they do have some things that are not balanced and healthy within themselves. And so it's actually a legitimate fear. But they use parental alienation tactics as a way to prevent the child from legitimately wanting to be closer to and spend more time with the healthier parent, which would be the target parent. Sometimes the favored parent just wants a child all to him or herself and feels entitled to have the child, just not recognizing the importance of both parents in a child's life. So sometimes that's a belief system that they have and they lock into and use parental alienation as a way to promote their agenda that way. Some favored parents have the attitude of, well, if I can't have you, then you can't have the child. And this is a deeper, darker revenge kind of motivation that the favored parent has, along with just having the attitude of, I do want revenge. I want to hurt you. And what better way to hurt you than to deprive you of our child? And so these are getting into the psychopathologies of these favored parents and explain why they do what they do in a way that hurts the target parent, hurts the child. Sometimes belief number 5 is the favored parent doesn't want their child to have any characteristics of the target parent. And so in their mind, the target parent is so damaged and unhealthy that they just don't want the child to have any of those traits. And so by interfering in the relationship and withholding the child from the parent, or at least significantly reducing custody, they can accomplish that. Sometimes belief number 6 is the favored parent believes, and maybe there's some legitimacy behind it, that they have been the primary parent. And so as the primary parent, they are entitled to remain in that position post-divorce. And sometimes that is true in the intact family. Maybe the target parent was the one that traveled for the job or had to be gone or worked shift work, things that did interfere in his or her ability to be a more hands-on parent. But post separation and divorce, the favored parent hangs on to that and feels entitled. And so again, it's part of revenge. Since I had to work so hard and be the primary parent during this relationship, you're sure not going to benefit with a relationship with the child post marriage. And finally, false belief number 7 is, I don't want my child to have a relationship with a future step parent someday. So the favored parent feels very threatened by the child becoming involved with a step parent and learning how to love and feel love for a step parent, that the favored parent is very insecure about that possibility and feels like he or she may be replaced by a step parent, and doesn't understand and realize that a child's heart is big enough to love many people. But that's another false belief that they have. And then they use sometimes false allegations against the target parent to, again, achieve what they want to achieve in court. So let me just kind of talk briefly here about, can parents create false memories in children? Not just have them repeat false allegations, but actually get them to believe that it happened to them. And the short answer is yes, absolutely. We have decades of research now that indicate that it is not difficult, especially for children in the age ranges of 3 to 10-ish, to get them to believe that something happened when in fact it never did happen. And so there have been many elegant research studies done to illustrate exactly what I just said. And let me give you one such illustration to help you understand how actually easy it is to get a child to believe and come to claim as a memory a false memory. So Stephen Ceci and his colleagues back in 1994 conducted a study that is commonly referred to as the mousetrap study. And in this study, what they did is they took children individually, and over the course of several weeks, but only one time a week, they had conversations with each child about their finger getting caught in a mousetrap. And this never happened to any of the children in the research study. Nobody had their finger caught in a mousetrap. But over the course of these interviews that were highly suggestive and asked the children to use imagination and were leading and suggestive in nature, such as, when you got your finger caught in that mousetrap, actually saying things that never happened to the child. Well, initially, the first couple of weeks, the child would say, well, that never happened to me. I never got my finger caught in a mousetrap. But over time, by repeatedly talking about it and making reference to it, they came to believe it. And one little boy, he stated at the end of the many weeks of these interviews, he stated to the researcher an elaborate story about how his finger got caught in the mousetrap and how his brother was involved and how the whole family piled in the van and took him to the hospital. And then he showed the researcher which finger it was. And he talked about getting bandages around that finger. And again, this never happened. So there's a tremendous amount of research that is no longer challenged that, yes, false memories can be implanted in children, actually quite easily. So what happens to children when false allegations are part of the parental alienation equation? Well, unfortunately, they can contribute to the toxic stress response, which is a neurochemical reaction to stress. And over time, it can be detrimental to the child's overall physical health and mental health. So toxic stress. The psychological consequences to children who are caught up in a scenario in which one parent is trying to get them to make false allegations, and over time they just start to believe it themselves. Depression, anxiety, conduct disorders, are very common reactions in children who have felt the crushing weight of a favored parent's attempts to ruin the child's relationship with the other parent. And all of this affects school performance. It affects their self-esteem, their confidence, their ability to interact socially, perform in sports, perform in their beloved activities, etc. So the consequences to children are real. I mean, they're very real to the target parent, obviously, but they're real to the child as well. So what if you are falsely accused? What can you do? So if it's early on into the process and the child doesn't fully believe, and you can detect that the child is just repeating what he or she has been told to repeat, it's okay to say, that never happened. I would never abuse you. I love you too much. You have to be firm, but not aggressive. All right. Saying it essentially the way I just said it, as part of this presentation to you. It's okay to do that in the beginning. However, if you are in a scenario or a situation in which the child really believes the allegations, that they have over time come to incorporate this as a memory, in their memory system, then don't try and change their mind. Don't try and convince them that they're wrong, that this never happened. That will only create a situation in which the child digs his or her heels in deeper to prove you wrong. It's best to just let it go. Focus on the time that you have with the child at the time you have the child, the present. All right. And don't be angry. Don't be frustrated. Hide it from the child. Certainly, you have your resources to help you deal with, the false allegations, because they're truly horrific, when they happen to parents. But don't put that burden on the child. Some other things that you can do are avoid denigrating the parent, the favored parent, to the child, and saying, well, there goes your mom again. She's just making up stuff and trying to get you to believe it. Just leave it alone, essentially. If you're not in the very, very early phases of a false allegation where you can firmly tell the child, I didn't do that. I would never do that. I love you too much. Essentially, you just have to focus on the here and now and what is happening that you can control. All right, because you can't control what the favored parent does or doesn't do. So be mindful of your emotions. All right, be mindful of the toll that this takes on you, and try not bring it to the child's world, because as tempting as it is to try and set the record straight, that's not going to benefit you or the child, at this time. So focus on the here and now. Practice self-care as one of your mechanisms to take care of yourself is another recommendation that I always have for target parents. Take care of yourself. This is a very trying time for you, and it's so discouraging when these false allegations happen, especially when they happen repeatedly. You'll be able to better endure this marathon. It's not a race if you take care of yourself as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and hope this information was helpful to you as you continue to press forward to regain or at least maintain a relationship with your child. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Next week on Families Divided, we will have part 1 of Dr. Sue Cornbluth's segment with Dr. Colleen Murray on the alienated parent's mindset.